Hello, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the latest episode of the Magical Experiments podcast. I'm super excited because today I will have Aeiden Swan on for this episode. Now, if you are someone who's watching this on YouTube, I'd appreciate it if you would like and comment and share this with other people. If you are someone on Substack, I would appreciate it if you subscribed, if you heart this, if you share it, because that is what helps get these cutting edge interviews out. I interview people about their cutting edge magical practices because, as the magical experimenter who has been evolving the discipline and practice of magic for the last 20 years, I've been practicing over 30 years, I'm interested in seeing what people are doing and where they are going with their magic. And of course, continuing to find where magic can evolve and grow. All right, without further ado, let's welcome Aeiden Swan to Magical Experiments Podcast. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Thank you for having me. I'm Aeiden Swan. I am a occult practitioner of varying forms living in South Africa. I'm in Cape Town. This is Zephyr, who is one of my little familiars. You'll probably hear him growling at my chain throughout this whole thing. Um, and I am an artist. I'm an ink painter working with wildlife, but in an occult manner, not in the typical sort of lion chasing the impala on the safari kind of thing. And my art and my magic are combined. They're basically one thing. So my big project is I've been working on a tarot deck for the past 4 years.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into that with you. It's such a pleasure to meet you. This, as I was saying right before we started recording, I don't think we've actually met before, like, other than like passing ships passing in the night on Facebook, where we've exchanged a couple comments or things like that. But I always find it interesting to reach out and connect with different people who are doing fascinating work. And I mean, I think the first thing I want to get into is talking about how you work with your birds and in terms of familiars, because the way you kind of you just kind of described it there, I'm like, huh, what is that? So tell me a little bit first about your magical journey. How did you get into magic? How did you get to where you are today? And then let's get into it.
So that's a long story that I'll try and keep short. So my mother was pagan
Okay.
until my father basically forced it out of her. He was or is a hardcore atheist and would not allow any of that nonsense, as he said, in the house. So I was brought up with a very pagan upbringing for half of my childhood until it was forbidden. And kept it up in secret right until pretty much my late 20s. And then I went through the whole trying to force it back because my mother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And I'm terrified that my beliefs and my abilities meant that I was schizophrenic too. So I cut it off for a number of years and then it just kept
Hmm.
pulling and pulling and came back into it in a very serious way in my late 30s. And since I've been a full time artist, I was a couturier and had to keep that side of things very hidden because I worked with really conservative people. Once I closed that company down and became a full time artist, I just let everything out the closet. And it has since then changed my life in ways that I could not imagine.
Wow, I mean, that is just touching the edge of what sounds like a very powerful story right there. I I'm curious, how has your hardcore atheist father responded now that you're kind of like out of the closet and you're like, I'm just gonna be what I want to be?
Not Well, so we barely talk anymore. We were very close when I was younger. We hardly talk for various reasons. And I remember when I told him that I was starting to create a tarot deck, he started to lecture me because he's one of those men, those boomer men, who thinks that he owns the woman in his life. And
Mm.
he came up with this, you are my daughter and you will do as I say. And it's like, I'm a 40-year-old woman, shut up. And I put the phone down on him.
Good.
And then it has not been spoken of.
Well, good on you for a couple different reasons on that one. I mean, like not that you need my approval or anything, but I just think that, like, yeah, I grew up closeted with my beliefs for a while as well. In my case, my mom was hardcore Christian, so it was a little bit, so there was
That's
that. But it's just interesting, like it just goes to show, like, regardless of what the upbringing is, sometimes we are in the closet for a while and then we come out and we're like, hey, I'm here. It doesn't much matter what you're gonna say or do because I will hang up the phone on you.
that's it. And we've got to make our place in the world and our way in society. Our parents have their own place,
Mhm.
and we are not them, and it's not our job to live through them, which is
Yeah.
something they have a hard time in believing.
Yeah, there's some real truth to that. I mean, there's kind of like this visceral, like with parents. I'm not a parent myself, I never will be, thankfully. But there is this very visceral experience, I think, what I've experienced from my mom and my dad when he was alive, where it was kind of like they were trying to live through me in a way because they were trying to, I don't know, address their own wounding through
Yeah,
living through me. Um, and I saw that when I had stepkids as well in some ways, and that was something that really didn't work for me because I'm like, no, that their journey is theirs, that it's not mine. So I think that's an interesting point, you know.
that makes total sense. My father very much did the trying to have me do the things that he wanted to do but couldn't do. So
Yeah.
I be an artist because he'd wanted to be an artist but wasn't allowed, which is why I gave up art for 20 years. That's why
No,
I became a couturier.
and now the irony of it all is you are an artist and you're doing things, but you're doing it the way you want to do it. Darn
That's it.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about your work with your familiars. You said that you approach this a different way. So what does that mean? Let's pull that out and expand on that.
So I worked in bird rescue for 10 years.
Hmm.
And in that time, I was working incredibly intimately with hundreds of individuals of probably about 60 different species. And sometimes it was from birth to death, but most of the time it was through injury because I worked with birds that were non-rehabilitatable, that the normal rescues would have just euthanized immediately. And I had huge aviaries so that they could come to me, they could be healed, and then they could live a happy life in as natural a background as possible, knowing that they were safe, they were cared for, any disabilities that they had were taken care of. And I mean, in that time, it was having, if there was a particular bird that had come to me that was injured, that bird was with me all day, every day, at my side, often in my lap, for weeks at a time. Frequently, I'd sleep in the aviaries. And through that, I got to see and to hear and to understand birds in a way that not many people have the privilege of doing, including many people who study birds for a living, haven't heard the sounds or seen the behaviors that I've seen just from basically being one of them. And from that scientific base, it became worked into the magical. and it became a working with them for their healing and for my healing because I was in a very wounded place at that time. And learning to understand them and to feel them and to know what they needed. And with my two little guys, they they're my they're my everything. And if I'm going through a rough time, they'll come and sit on my chest and they'll purr and they will not move until I feel better. And I can feel when something's wrong with them because birds hide illness and they hide pain. Because if they show that in the wild, they will be killed, be it by their flock mates or picked up by a raptor or something like that. So it's really hard to know when birds are injured or sick. And I can usually feel when something's wrong with them. And from that, they have helped many, many people who come through not only my shop back when I had my shop, often my clients, while I was doing a fitting with them, they'd end up holding one of the birds and they'd build up a relationship with the birds. And I wasn't just making pretty things. I was working with cancer patients. I was working with people in the middle of their transsexual journey back when it was not socially acceptable. People at very difficult points of their lives, and often the birds would help with their healing. And in the end, they have very much, they've been instrumental in mine.
Have you read Spell of the Sensuous by David Abram?
I have not, but I'll add it to my list.
Yeah, highly recommend. I'd be curious as to your take on that book because he kind of what you're describing is in some ways kind of like his own journey. And it's not the same. I don't want to,
Yeah.
but it's just there's just some interesting parallels there. Um, what I find really fascinating is that is this kind of connects to a an approach that I've been working on called experiential embodiment, where which is in part based off of Spell of the Sensuous and some other works, but of course also based off my own stuff. But
Yeah.
really connecting with the land, connecting like with my cats, connecting
Mm.
with just the wild the animals, the insects, etc., that live in on my home, but really
Yeah.
kind of connecting with the pulse of life and allowing it to speak in through me and
Mm.
mediate through me.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, well, and so I'm kind of curious. Do you feel like this relation? Because you mentioned going out into the bush. Do you feel like this relationship with your birds translates over to how you interact with the land around you and how you interact like when you go out into the bush?
Very, very much. So I live about a 5 minute walk from a forest on a mountain. So I can send you photos. I live in an incredibly beautiful place. I'm so, so blessed for it. And I have a secret altar in the forest. And a short while back, a pair of black accipiters, black sparrowhawks, nested in the tree directly above my altar. And they had a baby. I didn't meet the baby at the time, but I got to know the parents quite well. And then this year, this young black sparrowhawk, a melanistic one. So melanism's the opposite of albinism. Creatures have too much melanin, so they're black or they're darker. This one is melanistic, and instead of having like a white tuxedo, she's got a totally black chest with a little white beard. So very distinctive. I start seeing this bird all over my area, which is fairly far from where the nest is, and think, yeah, okay, could be the baby from one of a number of nests in sort of a 2 kilometer radius. And she's hunting and she's always around. She's not afraid of me. The second someone else comes up, she'll fly away, but she lets me very, very close to her. And Tom and I went for a walk in the forest. And sorry, just removing a thingy. we went to my altar section, and there is that young black sparrowhawk teaching her baby to hunt. So it's this multi-generational that I got to know the parents, and then the baby found me, and I've sort of built up this relationship with these generations of sparrowhawks. But this this young one, I think that she's a female, very sure she's a female, has she's just got I've got such a special relationship with her. But I know so many of the creatures in the area. I walk in the mountain very, very frequently, and it's always noticing and building relationships and working energetically with whoever's there and with whatever's happening on the mountain, because we have amazing seasons here. Winter's like the secret season. It's when everything blooms in Cape Town because we're a Mediterranean climate. So winter's actually our time of life. And just going outside, going for a walk in winter in the rain with everything being so alive and just what's the word, like
Verdant?
keying to sorry.
I said verdant, but
Yeah, well, it is so verdant, but also just keying myself into uh, energetically into all of that
mhm.
is just so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I mm, I feel that. I mean, it's the same thing like when I go for a walk here in Eugene, Oregon, or somewhere else. It's connecting to that. I think that it's something that so many humans have lost out on because we've
It is.
gotten more and more removed from our environment, and it's actually one of the reasons why, like for myself, I've kind of it's funny, like people think with magical experiments, like, oh, well, like you're going to be like in the latest technology and stuff. And it's like, well, I'm really not. I'm actually into the somatic experiencing, and what I'm experimenting on is how can I connect more intimately with the world around me and with the spirits in a way that is less humanocentric focused
Yeah,
and more focused on creating this ongoing collaborative healing relationship which hopefully then translates outwards toward just how humanity shows up in general, because I think that we're out of balance with our environment and with the world around us, and like that's part of the work that I think honestly needs to happen. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of the same thing with your own approach.
it does sound like we're doing very, very similar work, and I totally agree with you. I mean, I used to live in Johannesburg, which is very big city. I've been told that it's basically LA, very similar to LA. There is it is considered one of the biggest man-made forests in the world. However, in areas there are no trees and no greenery. And I lived in the city centre for a long time. And seeing the people there who haven't seen a piece of greenery in weeks. And I think that that is very connected to the mental health epidemic that we have, to depression, to poverty, to a lot of the terrible things that humans are currently dealing with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there's something very real and powerful about living close to the land and connected with it. Um, I have a mentor who does some work along these lines, and one of the in men's work, he basically takes men out to the bush and has a it's and they basically get like a 5 day, 6 day experience where they get to experience kind of the intimacy of living
Yeah,
on the land and discovering themselves through that process. And it's something I'm looking forward to doing hopefully this year, but no later than next year, because I think that it's so essential. We've forgotten a lot of the ways of being that our ancestors just kind of knew. And in the process, we've forgotten our connection with the land. And so
Yeah,
finding that again becomes so essential. So it sounds like really powerful work that you're doing as a result of that, and the way
thank
that you're
you.
helping other people connect with themselves as a result, but also how you're connecting with the spirits of your birds and their essence in their life, learning their language in a very real sense. And of course, it's interesting because when we think of language, like here I am speaking words, right? Well, that's
Yeah,
language. Well, that's one form of language, but there are a lot of other forms of language that are present and available to us. But those forms of language aren't words. It's different. It's a different way of being. And I think that if we look at it, language from that perspective, that language is a state of being
yeah.
instead of a state of doing, it changes things. So what are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with that 100%. And I mean, these two, and so their their predecessor was Aubrey.
Hmm.
Aubrey passed away last year, April.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
thank you. He was my absolute familiar. We'd been together since he was 3 weeks old. He died at 10. We had a link like nothing on earth, and he could understand human language. And it's very interesting how there's that they understand a lot more than we think. And then how to communicate with them through body language, because birds are predominantly body language,
Hmm.
and through singing and through making music. I mean, these little guys are mad about music. I take my drum out, or Tom opens the piano, and they are there in a second. They want to be involved, they want help, and it's making music is the most incredible way to communicate with animals in general, but birds in particular, that it just opens something up beyond words.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it
And
makes a lot of sense. I actually have a friend of mine. I'm gonna point her toward this interview. She'll love it. She owns a pagan bar, but she also has a lot of animals, including birds. And so she talks
yeah,
about this, like some of the stuff you're talking about. Like she'll totally connect with it. So it'll be interesting to see what she thinks about the episode. But no, that makes a lot of sense. It's the same thing like I find with my cats. Like they communicate with me all day long, and they'll meow at me, of course, because they've learned that okay, humans make noise, so I'll make noise at the human in order to communicate. So they know,
yeah,
but they communicate in a lot of other ways, and
it,
it's like, when you tune yourself into what they're trying to share with you and how they're connecting with you, you quickly discover like there's this very intimate way of being and knowing. And it's funny because I went up and visited my beloved recently, and um, she has a dog, and she said that since I've left, when she plays the voice notes from me, that
yeah,
that her dog Spirit walks around and is kind of like, well, where is he? So it's like, they know that like people think, I think one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard is that animals don't have souls. This is something that like humans came up with, and I think it's one of the
oh,
dumbest things that humans ever came up with because it's like,
yeah,
no, animals have
mhm,
souls. Every form of life has some form of soul connection.
yeah,
If anything, it just speaks to the fact that we feel threatened by it because we know that what we're doing is wrong.
exactly. That phrase makes me so angry. I went to a very Christian school when I was small because I grew up in a small town, and you went to the school you could walk to. Your parents did not take you to school in a car. It's just not done. So I went to this terrible Christian school, and we had it drummed into us that only humans have souls and animals don't go to heaven. And from tiny age and with my upbringing, it was like, that sounds like complete and utter bullshit. Of course, my animals have a soul. And I mean, I didn't know the word at the time, but I've always been an animist, I think. And everything has a soul, everything is sentient in some way or other.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Everything has some form of life force or connection. It may not we just because we're not aware of it doesn't mean that it's not there. It just speaks to
Yeah.
the fact that we've dulled ourselves in certain ways, which is one of the reasons why, at least from my end, like the experiential embodiment, it's about sharpening and honing my awareness. It's about getting
Yeah.
rid of that dullness and becoming fully immersed and connected with the life force that is around me and being present with it, but being able to work with it respectfully and
Yeah.
collaboratively, not trying to coerce it, because that's the other thing. Like I don't, when I see a lot of like some of the grimoire traditions and things like that with magic, it's all about like trying to coerce.
Mm.
And I'm like, I'm not into that. Like, I don't want to force something to work with me. I want, if I'm like with my cats, I want them to choose to work with me because that's what
Yeah.
feels right to them. And if they don't want to work with me that way, that's okay. Like, there's no expectation. When I am working on the land, I want to connect with the land in a meaningful and purposeful way and take good care
Yeah.
of it. And I don't want it to feel like, well, here's this human that's trying to force his way onto me and control me. Well, that's not what I'm here for. But so many people are. So,
Yeah.
what in your opinion, what can someone who's just learning about this, something a practice that you and I feel like we're both kind of on the same page here. Like I think I found a soul sister here. You know,
Yeah.
so how do we, what you're like, what would you share to somebody who's hearing this right now and thinking like, wow, that sounds like a better way to go about things, like to get started on that path. I know what I would share, but I'm curious, like, what would you share for that?
To stop and listen. You go somewhere, be it your backyard, be it a patch of grass on the pavement, be it the forest, wherever you can, go somewhere and just sit and listen. Listen to whatever creatures are there. I mean, whether they're ants or raptors or lions, whether it's grass or stone, just sit and listen and genuinely connect and go every day if you can to the same place and just listen. There's a whole book about that I haven't read as yet, that my partner swears by, so I need to read it one of these days, called What the Robin Knows.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. And when he told me about it, it was like, oh, that makes sense. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
apparently, this book, a lot of the game rangers in my country have read and do work by those premises.
Okay, I just found that book. I'm gonna add it to my
Yeah.
wish list right now.
I don't get to read very much.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sadly not very well read, and I have very little time to read. So what time I do have, I mean, it takes me like a year to finish a book, to be perfectly honest. So I have a pile of shame that is taller than me.
Hmm.
So I'm quite careful about what I choose to read because I know it's going to be a long-term investment.
I get it. I mean, I'm an avid reader. I have like 15 bookmarks and 15 different books. It takes me forever to finish a book, but it's because I'm reading all the different books. But I mean, I read every day, but I also get it. I mean, we have, different people have different ways to approach and know the world. There's not a this is why I emphasize experiential embodiment and knowledge, because like, yeah, you can do a lot of book reading, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you've experienced the world around you.
Yeah.
It just means you know some things. And a saying that I have is challenge what you know to discover what you can learn, because the whole
Mm.
idea is like, okay, I know stuff. Like I've learned something from a book, but that becomes a blinder
Yeah.
that keeps me from experiencing the world around me, where what I really need to do is open and expand my awareness. So, like in a very real sense, what I'm seeing with you as we're talking and connecting with you is, you have this way of knowing the world that is very intimate and powerful, um, because of the way that you're connecting And so there that form of knowing, that form of learning, that form of discovering is just as valid as reading a book. And
Yeah,
I've engaged in that same form of knowing myself. Like when I go and I walk around in the environment around me, around my land, or I go out somewhere else, like in the town that I live in, it's not just, I don't want to just be looking at my phone. I don't want to be in my head. I want to be in my
no,
body.
exactly. I turn my phone off or I leave it at home when I'm going out for a walk.
Hmm.
I do not involve myself in that because during that time, I don't, I need to be connected. I need to be somewhere else that is not in the human world and not with technology in particular. And I'm pro tech, I'm not anti tech. Tech is amazing. It has changed my life and my art and my ability to connect with people as a chronic introvert and not good with people person. So I love tech and it has its place, but in my magical practice and my just day to day being, that is not its place.
No, I hear that. I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, like I think tech's a reality, and that's fine. I mean, I use technology all the time. I use it to write my books, do all the other things that I do. So I get it. And I think at the same time, there's something essential, like knowing when to separate it out. It's funny because like last night for the full moon, I did a ritual over Zoom with my beloved, and so that was great. We were able to connect
Mm,
using that as a way to do the ritual, and so we were able to be together, even though we're far apart right now. And that was powerful because it was a way for us to really just connect to each other. So, like I called the quarters and drew up the sphere and then drummed up the moon and did some other stuff, and we were both there. So, I mean, tech has its purpose and can even be
yeah.
great for magical work,
Mm,
and it doesn't replace it.
yeah, exactly. I love that you're using tech in that way and to connect with your beloved. Tom and I were long distance for a year, so I totally appreciate how difficult it can be to connect with someone over distance. And I think that that is absolutely wonderful and amazing that you've figured how to make that work for you.
Yeah,
I
very
think
much
a lot of
so.
other people need to.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're gonna get involved with somebody, and they're far away, like just figure it out. Because like if you
Yeah,
really want that person in your life, that's kind of the thing that you have to do. And I mean, that's really important. So
yeah.
I wanna shift focus a little bit here and talk about your tarot project because you
Mm.
said something that you said to me was that it's a hyper sigil. So let's talk about that. Talk a little bit about the tarot itself, what you're doing with it, and then how it's a hyper sigil.
So I started creating the tarot deck because I didn't find a deck. So we don't have very much available to us here. It's very expensive to import anything because customs and duties and shipping, it'll end up being like something that costs $35 will end up being $150. So there's not very much in terms of tarot and occult stuff that's available here. And I just didn't find a tarot deck that I really connected with. So I thought, no, let me do my own. And started the deck and started by what I do was every day draw, well, not every day, but I would draw one of the Rider Waite cards, and that would be the card that I'm creating. So it was totally random, it wasn't in order. And I work with a neuromancy, so I dream. And the creature that came to me in the dream, because again, it goes back to nature. I very seldom dream things that aren't nature related. And the creature that came to me in the dream is the creature who would be on the card.
Hmm.
And it started off not light, well, it was quite light. And as it went on, it obviously got deeper and deeper, and I figured out about a year ago that it's a hypersigil because each card I created, and some of the cards take 6 months to paint, some of them take a week to paint. But each one I've created, I've lived through the lesson of that card. Like when I had the Three of Swords planned for a while, and oh, sorry, hiccups.
No worries.
Um, I had been putting it off because it's a hard card and I just didn't want to go there. And the day I put that card on my drawing board, I got a call from a close friend that one of our mutual best friends had taken his own life.
Mm.
So the whole creation of that card was about dealing with that loss. And every single card has been literally living through its teachings. And I've started using it as an active hypersigil to make the changes in my life that I need to change. So I'm currently working on the Five of Pentacles. And I come from a very poor background. I've had a lot of money issues in my life, and I've been left with that awful sort of poverty mindset, even when I'm not broke. It's always that fear in the back of my mind. So I'm using my Five of Pentacles to as as a sigil to break through that poverty mindset and to do away with it. So basically, I'm creating this whole deck, which is all animals, as a way of healing the traumas in my life and creating my life in the way I need it to be. And the tarot's come through for me every single step of the way. There has not been, even when I've thought, this thing's way off, or I should not do this like that, and I've listened to it, it's come through for me. It's been just astounding.
Well, that sounds really powerful. It it's funny because I had a conversation yesterday at the time of this recording with the person that I interviewed, that the interview that came before you, Arden Lee, and she does a lot of work with hypersigils, and she also has a thing she calls repatterning, which is like this
Oh,
process
wow.
of repatterning your life. So like kind of like
Yeah,
what you're doing right there, like you're so it's interesting to me because like in a way, what it sounds like you're doing is like with that Five of Pentacles, for example, you're repatterning your relationship with with money and
yeah,
with wealth and with scarcity and coming up with your own nuanced relationship that's kind of like, well, hey, here's this new reality, here's who I am, here's what I choose to become, but you're using it through this process of creation of artistic creativity. And I appreciate that because I do a
yeah.
lot of magical work with art myself.
That's exactly it. And also through learning the lessons of each creature on each card. So my Five of Pentacles is a rat king. You know, when the rats get their tails tied in a knot and they're trapped? And it's five rats in a rat king that teach about how poverty is all connected, where it's not something that you are alone. You're connected to a bunch of other circumstances that keep you there, and you've got to untie all of those knots and learning about what the rats can teach me, or what the tortoise can teach me, or what any of the other creatures on the cards can teach me, and their relationships to each other, because they're very seldom one creature. Often there's two or more that are in, and it's usually a natural symbiotic relationship. And how to live not only better with nature, but better with my community through the creatures that are living through my tarot.
So wow, I mean, this kind of comes full circle to what we've been talking about, at the beginning, and so this is really powerful because you're taking that I'm going to just call it experiential,
Yeah,
embodied relationship with the land and with the animals, like what you've learned through your birds, and you've applied it to tarot, and then like you're bringing that through the art out into manifesting it outward in your life, of course, but also for the people down the line who are going to be using this, like it's kind of like, hey, here's a chance to experience a different look at the
yeah,
way and really to connect with the world around you in a much more intimate way because like it is that circle of life. We are all connected.
that's exactly it. And so what I do is I create the card and then I go and research. And not only research deeper into the particular tarot card, but research into the animals, their mythology, and mythology around the world, their history, be it scientific, be it fossil, be it whatever. And every single time, and obviously their behaviors, every time I've gone to research that creature, I have discovered that they are perfectly aligned to the values of that card. There hasn't been a single one that I've thought, yeah, that's a bit off, that's a bit of a stretch. It's every time it's been aligned, and there's an alignment through nature, through my dreams, and through human history and mythology, all intertwined. It's been the most profound experience.
Just really letting them land.
So it's
It's
yeah.
that is so exquisite. So how many cards have you created so far?
I have done 56 are
Oh,
complete.
wow.
Complete, yeah. And there's after I've done the painting, they get scanned in super high res, and then I do color correction, I fix up the lettering, all of that kind of thing. So there's another probably 20 hours of Photoshop in it. So, and there's the write-ups, which, as you as a writer know, that's actually the really hard bit, is creating the write-up for each card. So each one probably takes good 2 solid weeks minimum. So I've got another 4 that I'm busy with
Hmm.
that are in various stages of completion. And yeah, I think it's what, 23 left at
Have you
some, yeah.
so I'm curious because I'm getting ready to write. I'm almost done with my current book that I'm writing and I'm already
Sure.
getting ready for the next book. And
Wow.
oh yeah, I've written over 50 books. So I've got like book ideas and things like that. Like I'm always cranking away. But I'm curious, have you worked with the Tower card yet?
I have.
Okay, so I would love to hear your take on the tower because I'm gonna actually write a book called Tower Time,
Ooh,
which is all about working with tower moments and actually my beloved is gonna join me on that project, so it's gonna be interesting because I mean I know she has her own take on it, I've got mine, but like what is your take on the tower? What is your experience of the
ooh.
tower?
So my tower is a desert
Hmm.
with a skull, so an animal skull lying in the desert. And there is, unfortunately, my cards are downstairs, so I don't have Wi-Fi in my studio. I'm in my bedroom because I have Wi-Fi here. I live in an apartment block, and my studio's in what used to be the old laundry room at the other side of the block.
Okay.
Um, and on the horns of the skull, there is a bottle of lightning. And the whole thing behind it is there's a lizard. Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. Whoa, talk about the tower. We just fell over. I love it.
So there's a lizard sitting in the eye socket trying to decide whether to jump into this parched landscape or not. And the whole thing is, do you, since you're the lizard, do you break that bottle of lightning? You may get struck by lightning, or you may release the rainstorm that you need.
Hmm.
And it's all about that choice, which can be a really scary one. And often trusting that you need to break that bottle regardless. Because, okay, maybe you'll get struck by lightning, but if you don't break it, you're probably going to die of thirst in the desert.
Hmm.
You have a choice, but you don't actually have a choice. You've just got to trust. And that, to me, the tower is all about trust. Things have already gone as badly as they can. You've got to trust that the really scary thing you're doing or have to do is going to work out. So that's how I feel about it. I am an
Mm.
optimist, just a warning.
No, I like that. No, you know what I've discovered about the tower is that the tower is an opportunity, an invitation to recreate your life. You know, people think of it as a terrible moment, and it's like, well, it's stripping away all the delusions, everything that hasn't worked, and it's
Exactly.
bringing you back to the foundation. And
Yeah.
you can either go back into those patterns and rebuild those towers,
Yeah.
or you can do something else. You can
That's
fly away. You can crawl out of the rebel and then be like, you know what? I'm gonna walk away from this and I'm gonna start something new, but I'm gonna figure out my foundation first. That's that's like the biggest lesson that I learned from the last few years because I've had a number of tower moments over the last few years, and I'm kind of like after the last one, I was kind of like, you know, I am so ready to do something different. I'm tired of rebuilding the same damn tower. I'm gonna do something different with my life.
yeah, that is exactly it. I totally agree. So the tower happened when I've I've lost my income twice in 2 years.
Hmm.
The first time was when the South African film industry crashed, because I used to make the bulk of my money making props for film.
Hmm.
So I created the mock snakeskin and did the cave painting in Raised by Wolves, the big sci-fi series. I've made stuff for The Watch. I've made stuff for Invasion. You name it. I've worked on so many of the big series. And the film industry here crashed due to government corruption, and 15,000 people lost their jobs, including me. Um, and then shortly after that, AI killed the art industry. So I used to make the bulk of my art sales came from pet portraits. Now people can feed a pic of their dog or kitty into Midjourney and say, I want my dog in the style of the old masters, and it'll spit it out. So that disappeared completely. And it was like, okay, I can carry on moping like I've been doing for a year and trying the same old stuff that I was doing before that no longer works, or I can try something else. So that's when I created the fabric range that I've now just launched in December, which is my hello. Which way? That way. Which is
That's
all.
amazing. Wow.
Yeah, so it's all indigenous South African birds, butterflies, and plants. And the aim is to teach people not only about the nature around them, but also obviously conservation to help save the creatures. And it came from a place of I need a sustainable income that is doing what I love, that is not doing the same old thing. I need something totally new. And I love fabrics. I mean, I made clothing. I had a clothing company for 18 years. So it was taking that little bit of my past, which I've tried very hard to get away from because the end of that company was difficult, but spinning it in a whole new way to make something new and amazing that is hasn't been seen really on the market either. And I mean, without that tower moment, I would still be painting pet portraits and making props for film people who are just really mean.
Well, there you go. I mean, tower moments, transform our lives. They're invitations and opportunities.
Yeah,
And if you are fully willing to bring that out, I mean, that's a fascinating story. I love the pillow. I love that you were able to pivot, especially because I think, a lot of people are understandably right now really challenged about AI. I definitely have some strong opinions about AI, and there are things about it I definitely don't care for, including how it impacts art.
yeah,
It's like, well, okay, if we're gonna come up with this technology, could we put it to a better use than actually taking something from the creative potential? uh,
exactly.
of humanity, but that's its own thing. We don't need to get into that. But um, I want to thank you for coming on the show. For people who are interested in learning more about you, I know we have some information in the show notes, but where can people learn more about you?
Thank you so much. So, best place is my website, which is arcanaverte.com, Arcana like the tarot, and
Hmm.
then Berte, French for green. Um, or if you, I mean, I've got obviously all of the social media: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channel, which I love. I'm moving much more heavily this year into YouTube and into Twitch, because I love long form. So Arcana Verte on everything,
Okay,
but my website would be the first port of call.
perfect. And what I like to ask my guests, the final question is, what is one final word of wisdom that you would like to share with us that we can take moving forward into the day?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. I would say cook amazing food because food is life, and hug all your beasties, be they human or fluffy or whatever form they come in. Just surround yourself by amazing, amazing creatures that inspire you and bring you love.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Well, it's been such an honor to have you on the show. I'm glad that you reached out to me and showed some interest. This has definitely been a very enjoyable interview, and I look forward to seeing your tarot deck come out when it comes out.
Thank you so, so much. It's been so much fun and amazing connecting with someone I've actually got so much in common with that I had no idea.
There
Thank you
you
so
go. Like I said, I found a soul sister. Yeah.
much.
All right, that was another wonderful interview. So if you enjoyed it, please share, like, subscribe, heart, comment. Your commentary, your shares, your restacking, all that other stuff helps out immensely, helps other people find these amazing interviews with other cutting edge occultists and magicians who are doing the work to evolve magic. And if you're not familiar with my work, go to magicalexperiments.com, go over to books, and get reading one of the many, many books that I've written. Follow me on Instagram. Check out check out all the stuff that I'm putting out there. There is a lot going on out there in the magical world, but if you're going to find someone who's doing the cutting edge experimental work to evolve the discipline of magic, that is me. All right, Taylor Elwood signing off. Thank you.